Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope that now you are energetic enough because we are dealing with the most interesting part of history, which is source-based questions. Now we'll zoom in on how to formulate level 3 questions. Let's look at our slide. How to formulate level 3 questions. Comment on the usefulness, reliability, and limitation of the source. Learners must know that it is always 2 times 2, 4 marks. So remember, this is what we call skills. These are level 3 skills: reliability, usefulness, limitations, or bias. There's an example that follows. Study sources 1b and 1c. Explain how the 2 sources differ or complement each other. Is 2 times 2, 4 marks. Is always 4 marks. Explain how the 2 sources differ or complement each other. So we know that here we are dealing now with level 3 questions. I'm just going to highlight this. Study sources 1b and 1c. Explain how the 2 sources differ or they complement each other regarding the successes of the Marshall Plan. Is 2 times 2, 4 marks. Always a source-based question. It ends up with a paragraph question. Using the information or evidence in the relevant sources and your own knowledge, write a paragraph of about 8 lines explaining the successes of the Marshall Plan. So remember, this is just a guideline. We don't count those 8 lines. We don't count words to show that really it is 80 words. So this is just a guide. Using all sources and your own knowledge, write a paragraph of about 8 lines explaining the successes of the Marshall Plan. Is 8 marks. Now let's look on the next slide. How does a historian ascertain the reliability of the source? How do you make sure that the source is reliable? The following question will help you to answer the question on reliability. What type of source is it? Is it a primary or a secondary source? Who created the source? Was the author at the scene? Is the author an eyewitness? Meaning this particular person was there. If, for example, we talk about the DRC, we talk about Bishop Desmond Tutu. When Bishop Desmond Tutu, he will say in this extract that the DRC was a success because many truths were told during the DRC amnesty testimonies. Then, if you are given a source, comment on the reliability of source when you are dealing with the successes of the DRC Amnesty Committee. Therefore, then a learner is expected to say, this source, it is reliable because it is from Bishop Tutu. Bishop Tutu was there during the formation of the DRC. Now, a learner will say, this source, it is reliable because it is a primary source. So this source, it is reliable because it is provide a first-hand information. This source, it is reliable because it is from an eyewitness. This source, it is reliable, it was taken during the DRC years. So that's what we mean that the source, it is a primary source. When was it created? Does the date of the source correspond with the time of the event? That's what I've already said. This source, it was written during the DRC years because it says it is an extract from Bishop Tutu in 1996. Then Elena will be able to say this source, it is reliable because it was during the DRC years. Why was it produced? That was the purpose. Where was it produced? So in other words, it is easy to say that the source, it is reliable, provided it is a primary source. Let's look at the next slide. Remember, no source is 100% reliable. It means learners must pay a closer look whenever they are answering sources. Don't take it for granted that the source, it is reliable. You have to read and understand what is said in the source. A source is likely to be more reliable if it was created at the time of event in question. That is, a primary source gives that first-hand information. That's what we've already said on the slide. Sources created by people who were directly involved in an event can be more reliable because those people, they are providing a first-hand information. These sources will usually be biased, but they show us how a key role player experienced the event in question. Sources written by historians are also considered more reliable. However, be aware of the context in which way they were written. So it means a learner must not take them for granted because they were written by a historian. Therefore, then that source, it is reliable. He must read the source. Does the source say what the learner knows? Then if the source is not supported by any other sources, it means that source, it is not reliable. In other words, the source, it is reliable if the information in the source is supported or can be verified by other sources. If that information, this source, cannot be verified by other sources, therefore then that particular source, it is not reliable. Let's continue. And the next slide. How does a historian ascertain the usefulness of a source? Now, the learners will know that these responses of usefulness, they are the same responses for reliability. So if the learner was paying attention on the previous slides, when we talk about reliability, he will find that even in usefulness, the same answers, they apply. What does the source tell you? Who created the source? That is the author. When was it created? That is the date. Look at the purpose. Is it informative or facts opinionated? Is the source positive or negative? It means all these aspects, they are applicable on the previous slides, that is on reliability. Let's quickly focus on the next slide. How does a historian ascertain the usefulness of a source? Do you agree what the source is showing? Then if you agree, then that source, it is useful. Would it be typical at the time? What does the source not show us that we need to know? What does it mean? If the source, it is one-sided, it is not showing all the facts, therefore that source, it have limitation. That source cannot be usefulness. Can you relate this source to another? It means, can the information in this source be verified by other sources? If the information in this source can be verified by other sources, therefore then, it means therefore this source, it is useful. Hence, I said that all what is applicable to usefulness, it is also applicable to reliability. This is an example. Comment on the usefulness of this source to a historian researching the Birmingham March campaign in the USA in 1963. The keyword is usefulness. Always is 2 times 2, 4 marks. So learners must always look at the mark allocation. Immediately the question says 2 times 2, we need 2 responses. Each response carries 2 marks. Explain whether a historian would find this source reliable when researching on the Birmingham campaign. So mark allocation is 2 times 2, which is 4 marks. In conclusion, the following questions will help you to answer a question on reliability. What source is it? Is it a primary or a secondary source? Remember, learners, we said if a source is a primary source, that source is likely to be reliable. But you must read and understand it. Who created the source? Was the author at the scene? That is it an eyewitness? When was it created? Does the date of the source correspond with the time of the event? So remember, in our discussion, I indicated the fact that what is applicable to reliable is applicable to usefulness. Okay. I provided an example earlier on saying that, for argument's sake, let's say this source is from Bishop Tutu. Now, the question, comment on the usefulness of this source when you are researching about the work of the DRC Amnesty Committee. So, the caption of the source, it will say, this is an extract from Bishop Tutu in 1996. Then the extract will read as follows. The DRC was a success. Both the liberation movement and the apartheid agents, they testified to the DRC. Many truths were told during the testimonies in the DRC Amnesty Committee. Now the question will say, comment on the reliability of the source when you are researching about the work of the TRC Amnesty Committee. Then a learner will be able to say that this source, it is reliable because it is providing a first-hand information. This source, it is reliable because it is a primary source. This source, it is reliable because it was taken out during the TRC years in 1996. So remember, I said those responses are applicable even to usefulness. When you are asked to comment on the usefulness of this source, when you are researching about the successes of the TRC Amnesty Committee, the same responses. The source, it is useful because it provides a first-hand information. The source, it is useful because the information in the source could be corroborated by other sources. The source, it is useful because it was done during the TRC years. So, thank you very much for lending me your ears. Here, we tried by all means to discuss the level 3 questions. Thank you for lending me your ears.